Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, wow, a lot going on in the news today, folks. The government is shut down, but supposedly will open this evening. Who really cares? I mean, it's such a distraction what they're doing in Washington. Oh, by the way, this is the Investigative Journal. I'm Greg Anthony, and it is January 22nd, 2018, so let's get started. What are we going to do today? Well, we're going to cover how the Jesuits control America, and we'll go through this piece by piece. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the situation between the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, you know, if you listen to this show, I go one step farther. I don't subscribe to winning the battle of America by joining either party because they both work together. But it's good to understand where we're at today and then look at it from another perspective. So let's start with what you would get from the right wing and all of their commentators regarding what the Democrats have evolved to. Now, when I grew up, the Democratic Party was the party of labor, especially in Chicago. It was Mayor Daley's party. It was the party of the working man. And the Republicans were always considered to be this party that didn't like, basically opposed to any kind of social structure in America in a sense where, you know, minorities had a chance to prosper. They were just for big business, etc., etc., etc. And things have evolved over the last 40 to 50 years where really the Democratic Party is filled with socialism and communism. Did you know that a recent surveys with millennials, 76% claim to be socialist? So what is really going on? Because with this shift now, with Trump now being the purveyor of truth for the working man, the forgotten man, and the leader of the Republican Party, which is now morphed into the party of the working man, and the Democrats have become a left-wing group supporting things that seem socialistic or communistic. Now, what is the reason for this? The reason they're doing it is because in schools and all over the country, there's been a movement afoot to basically tear down America. And what I mean by that is tear it down from the initial beginnings. It was formed as a country for white people. It was formed as a country where the rich survive and the poor, are left out into the cold. It was a country that was formed with capitalism in mind. And lately in schools and in college campuses, and this has been going on, I believe, for the last 30 years, is to basically bring people to a point where they hate America, where they want to see a change in America. When we say a change, the best thing to do is to look at Obama, the Obama administration, and he ran on this goal of transformation of America. Now, what does that mean? The transformation of America means that they want to tear it from the inside out and say, listen, from the beginning, our founding fathers didn't have the working man or minorities in mind, but basically the whole system now needs to be changed. And so people are taught in school that the things that America has done have been evil. The things that are going on as far as consumption, capitalism, are evil. Climate change, which is a hoax, by the way, is really at the forefront of the now Socialist Democratic Party, as well as most millennials are growing up with this idea that it isn't really good to drive a car because you're going to destroy the earth. Now, the point is they want to destroy America, not get rid of America or United States, but change the way it operates. And by that I mean this. They want to turn it into a no-border country. The Democrats now support every left-wing minority group, no matter how crazy they are. Black Lives Matter is an example. And they will, or transgender people, any minority group is now applauded by the Democratic Party because of the evil white man in America who has destroyed, really, the fabric of this country. And now they want a total shift. So what are we talking about here? Trump gets in office now. The Republican Party has completely changed. The Democratic Party is now revolved into a communistic, socialistic party. And where's it headed? Well, if you listen to the right wing, which is the Rush Limbaugh people, etc., they're going to tell you that we need to stand up for strong borders. We need to respect our founding fathers. We need to go back to a system where, they're the working man, the forgotten man is respected. We need to build our jobs. We need to respect this country, the flag, etc. And we need to understand that the Democratic Party is now just a party that wants to change or transform America into something different, into a country of socialism, into a country of communistic principles, where all minorities have, they would rather give away take away that idea of work hard, get results, own a nice house, and make that possible for most everybody in America. They don't want that. They want to tear it down to a point where everybody lives in little homes or little cubicles and nobody can drive where they want to. It's a controlled state, so to speak. And they're doing it by transforming people's minds about what America is really about. Now, that's what you're going to get from the right wing. Now, it explains, in a sense, where the Democrats are coming from, because why else would they have changed so drastically? Why else, if you listen to them, and I have to listen to them, you listen to Chuck Schumer, the head of the Democratic minority in the Senate, Nancy Pelosi, etc., and you wonder what motivates them. For example, they shut the government down. Why? To protect the rights of illegal people in this country. Now, I've long felt that this should not even be discussed. As far as, for example, why even debate an issue like this? If it's illegal, why not debate how we're going to make the people that are illegal understand that they need to do this in a legal manner, in an organized manner, and we have to start looking at the issues, but that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about carte blanche. Create this kind of environment where illegal aliens have a sanctuary city. Criminals can hide under that cloak of, well, we need to protect all minorities. And it appears that the Democrats will jump on the bandwagon of every minority group and forget that there are 300 and some million people in this country, and most are not in that category. Now, who would say that a person who's an illegal alien here, isn't going to get treated fairly? Well, they have a choice. They either realize that they're illegal and they go and they decide to let the authorities know and then take their course as far as legal immigration, or they can hide behind the Democrats who basically want to protect this. Now, no one's saying we're looking at this from the left and the right without now discussing what we're going to talk about here in a minute. Really why they're doing this together, what is really going on behind the scenes. But that's exactly where they sit right now. The Democrats are basically turned into a socialist communistic country. The educational system is now teaching all of these things, that it isn't good to be an American. America has screwed people over since the beginning of its history back in 1776. And the Republicans now have turned into the party of the working class, turned into the party that's trying to revive American dignity around the world, etc., etc., is trying to say, hey, the Founding Fathers created this country for good purposes. So there's where we sit. But now let's go to where I believe we should go to. And that is understanding that both of these parties work together at the top levels. And what I mean by this is Trump and the top levels of the Democratic Party have a strategy. One, create this chaos where we're now pitting white America, the working class man, etc., etc. When I say white America, I don't just mean white people. I'm saying people in the Asian groups, in the black groups who have now taken a stance. Hey, listen, I want to live in America as one, white, black, and Asian, and yellow, all together, to work and to believe in capitalism, etc., and to believe in this country. That's kind of what they're pitting these people against Chuck Schumer and his socialistic democratic group who want to tear down everything. And what have we seen? Just chaos. Now, what they want in the end is really a transformation of America. And that is what's going to play out in the end, to control America. And the transformation will take place. That's the goal of the Jesuit order. And so we have to understand how they're getting there, how they've planned this out from the beginning. So when we look at the Founding Fathers of our country, where do we stand when we understand they're playing the Hegelian dialectic on us? Where do we stand when we realize we have no say in our government whatsoever under a two-party system like this? Where do we stand? We stand by saying we understand the game you are playing. We understand that the country was created. The principles on its surface are fantastic. If you look at the Constitution, and if it was meant to be done this way for the people, it's a great way to do it, and that's what we should strive for. But really, why we have to go back to the beginning of this country is that the Founding Fathers created it for a different agenda. They were controlled by Jesuits. They were controlled by the Vatican. And the reason that they passed the Constitution and the symbol of freedom all over the world was to one day tear it down. Create, build, tear down. Just like they create wars, then they rebuild the country they destroyed. So what they're doing in America is creating this great philosophy, but for another agenda. And the agenda is to one day get rid of it. So what do we have to do? We have to understand the hidden agenda of the top level people in our country. And that brings us to the remainder of our show. How the Jesuits really do control America. And they were integral in founding of the United States of America. Now, why don't we know that in history? Why? Because they have a secret agenda. And the agenda is to bring it to a pinnacle and then to tear it down as we're seeing right now. And the only way they could have done this is by creating a constitution that allowed them in through freedom of religion. Because if that wasn't in there, we'd have never had them here, because many of the Protestants in the beginning of a formation of this country did not want Jesuits in the Catholic Church here, because they saw what they did in England and in Europe. But the Jesuits were integral in the donation of land for the capital. They had been here long before the formation of this country, which was on a land that used to be called Rome. That's the place where that's where Washington, D.C. is now. And the states of Virginia and Maryland. The Jesuits were involved in the design of the District of Columbia, with all of its Masonic and Satanic symbols, such as the upside-down pentagram, the Freemasonry compass, the owl, etc., all of which attracts Satanic energy into D.C. Now, the Jesuits set up the educational institutions in this country, such as Georgetown, which was the first university here, Jesuit University. There are many more now. And that's right next to the Capitol building. right next to the White House, near the White House. Now, this was done to shape the minds of Americans and to find people to use for their agenda. That's why in Jesuit Georgetown, the School of Foreign Service was created by Father Edmund Walsh. Because most of our diplomats, they were from Georgetown University. And it goes on and on. Now, here's the deal. Let's talk about the Jesuit control of the United States. Okay, let's get right down to it. Here's where we stand. The Jesuits were integral in donating the original land. The Jesuits were involved in the design of D.C., with all of its Masonic and Satanic symbols, such as the upside-down pentagram, Freemasonry compass, the owl, all of which attracts Satanic energy into D.C. The Jesuits, like I said, set up the educational institutions, such as Georgetown, to shape the minds of America and to find people to use for their agenda. The Jesuits caused the Civil War to bankrupt the United States of America, which led to the treasonous Congressional Act of 1871, the 14th Amendment, etc., which created a new entity called the United States of America, which is a city-state corporation, which has a new constitution. Did you know that? Oh yes, the Jesuits fulfilled their evil Jesuit oath by killing many presidents. John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe, William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Abraham Lincoln, and JFK. Now, I mentioned Adams, and I think I misspoke with that. Now, the Jesuits caused the stock market crash of 1929 so that they could have their people buy up the corporations for pennies on the dollar. The Jesuits and the Vatican-controlled people behind them caused the Titanic. Actually, it was the RMS Olympic to sink, killing Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and John Jacob Astor, who were wealthy and very wealthy and opposed the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, what this means is you really have to do your history to understand really what the Federal Reserve Bank is, and to get behind the scenes and understand how the Jesuits and Vatican have been in control of this country from the beginning. That's the story that the left and the right don't tell you, because they all work for this group. The Jesuits, they set up the IRS, which is never ratified by all the states, to collect interest on their Federal Reserve notes, and to create an illegal income tax, which is unconstitutional on its face, and they made it voluntary, which nobody knows about. The Jesuits used the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, etc., to steal the wealth of Americans via the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not federal, of course, folks. And they print money and create inflation through fractional reserve lending, through stock market manipulation, etc. The Jesuits, they set up the CIA, I call it the Catholic Intelligence Agency, not to protect Americans from foreign interests, but to protect their own, the Jesuits. Jesuits use over 50% of the U.S. budget for the war machine, which recently helped them take control of Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. This is why Syria, Iran, and North Korea are being demonized by American leaders, as they have not bowed down to the authority of the Jesuit general, and do not have a Jesuit Rothschild central bank. At the end of the day, the script, folks, is pretty simple. In order for the Jesuit general to control every country in his one world government, they need to control the money supply of every country. Jesuits use the District of Columbia as their war machine. America's key role is to be the war machine, the Roman army of the modern day, to carry out their agenda, to push the world into a one world government and a one world religion, and no doubt to enforce the mark of the beast. Yes, that's what we're facing now, folks. They steal the wealth of Americans via their Federal Reserve Bank, their illegal IRS, through manipulation of the stock market, through fractional reserve lending. Now, you see, the left and right-wing media are playing the game. They won't even delve into this, and they'll call you a conspiracy theorist nutcase. But folks, now we're getting to the truth. They use money to fund and control the Middle East. They use money to fund the massive war machine, which now has 900 military bases in 153 countries. They use money to fund, train, and arm ISIS rebels. And they are not fighting for Islam or Muhammad, but for the agenda of the Jesuits in Rome. During the past 30 years, the District of Columbia has spent $14 trillion on wars. We could have paid off our debt, huh? We're $22 trillion in debt? Or more? Who paid for all of that? American taxpayers through an illegal IRS, through illegal income taxes. America is the engine that drives the machine, the money machine, the war machine, etc., etc. And it is imperative to keep the Americans dumbed down so they never get to what we talk about here. And the goal is to see how they help establish the United States of America and how they have taken control of it. That's really the goal of this radio program. They won't give you the complete story or absolute proof of everything, as that would make the study way too long. You can search Google and YouTube for plenty more information than you can get on this show because there's so much, folks. But the Jesuits, we have to look at, helped found the United States of America. That's what you don't hear on the left and you don't hear on the right. And I spent the whole week talking to my millennial friends and saying, if you really want communism and socialism, you better understand who created it. And then see what the history of the organization that's creating the movement you now follow in America. Do you still want to be involved and be on the side of these assassins? You have to ask yourself that. Yes, you do. And that's why they don't want you to know. Now, before the United States of America was founded, guess what the settlers were? They were 98% Protestant, as they had fled Europe to escape the Inquisitions. Of what? How many millennials know the story of the Jesuits of Rome, who are the military arm of the Vatican? Right. That's your leaders. That's your New World Order leaders, you millennials. That's what you who are creating climate change. They're the greatest astrologers in the world telling you everything about the earth, right? You better know who they are if this is what you're following, a globalism agenda. You better follow the leaders, but you don't even know who they are. That's what's so crazy about this. It's like the blind leading the blind on both sides of the aisle, on the left and on the right, without really understanding what we're going to talk about in the second half hour. Some of the hidden history regarding the formation of your own country, who many of you on the left, you millennials, decry and say is the worst country in the world from the beginning. Well, you better know who created it. And then you on the right, who say it is the greatest country in the world. Look at what the Constitution was there for. You better know who created it and why they did it that way. Both of you on the left and right need a new history lesson. We're going to get you started on it in the next half hour on the Investigative Journal. We're here to please, here to help, here to get the information to you, an informed public. This story should be right next to everything else you read, but it isn't because they, the masters, your owners, don't want you to know this. They want to keep you dumbed down, but we're not going to allow that to happen. Come back in the second half hour on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, folks, back for the second half hour, and why don't we catch up on some hidden history that many of us on the, you people on the left or on the right need to understand. And the Jesuits came to America really to set up shop. Before the United States of America was founded, the settlers were 98% Protestant, as they had fled Europe to escape the Inquisition of the Jesuits of Rome and the Vatican. The Jesuits being the military arm of the Vatican. Did you know that in the beginning of America, back before the Constitution and everything, the Protestants banned Catholics from being lawyers, from voting, from holding public office. The Jesuits had to change this, and that's why they used the Founding Fathers to create the Constitution, to create what? Freedom of religion, so they could get their dirty little fingers into this country. And so, like I said, the Jesuits came to America to set up shop. To be able to control Protestant Americans, it had to be a long, planned effort, which has been going on since 1776. In the beginning, the Jesuit Carroll family played a huge dynamic role in founding of the District of Columbia. So they had their people at the top echelon of our country without anybody below knowing. All the Protestant settlers not knowing. And they do the same thing today. Isn't it amazing? And Maryland, through Catholic founded, though Catholic founded, had, like all other colonies, laws excluding Roman Catholics from holding office. Yes. But once these laws were nullified by the Maryland Constitution of 1776, Jesuit Daniel Carroll of the Carroll family, the Carroll family being the first to be bishops, John Carroll, the first bishop, Jesuit bishop of the United States, he was elected to the Maryland Senate, serving from 1777 to 1781. Daniel Carroll, born on July 22nd, 1730, died July 5th, 1796, was an American politician and plantation owner from Maryland, considered one of the founding fathers of the United States. Carroll was sent abroad for his education, and between 1742 and 1748, he and his brother John studied under the Jesuits at the College of Saint-Omer in France, which was established for the education of English Catholics. He supported the American Revolution, served in the Confederation Congress, was a delegate to the Philadelphia Convention of 1787, which wrote the Constitution, and was a U.S. representative of the First Congress. He supported the American Revolution. Yes, he did. Supported that American Revolution. And guess what? Amazing story. Daniel Carroll was one of the 5 men to sign both the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution of the United States. Isn't that interesting? Yes. He signed both the Constitution of the United States and what I just mentioned. Okay, so here we go. One of the 3 commissioners appointed to survey the newly designated District of Columbia and acquire land for new federal capital in the district, Carroll was related to 2 major landowners whose land was acquired by the government, his brother-in-law Nutley Young and nephew Daniel Carroll of Duddington. The new United States Capitol was to be built on the wooded hill owned by his nephew Daniel Carroll of Duddington, and as his official act as commissioner on 15th April 1791, he and fellow commissioner David Stewart of Virginia laid the cornerstone for the beginning boundary line survey of the District of Jones Point on the south bank of the Potomac near Alexandria, formerly Virginia. Now remember, the land was donated, bordered Virginia and Maryland, which combined means Virgin Maryland. The land is located by Tiber Creek, or by Tiber Creek as a tributary of the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Originally called Goose Creek, it was renamed by settler Francis Pope. Pope owned a 400-acre farmstead along the banks of the creek, which, in a play on his surname, he named Rome after the Italian city, and he renamed the creek in honor of the river which flows through that city. It's called the Tiber. It was southeast of then Georgetown, Maryland, and amid lands that were selected by the city of Washington, the new capital of the United States. It flowed south toward the base of Capitol Hill, then west, meeting the Potomac near Jefferson Pier. Isn't it interesting? The young Carroll was educated as a Jesuit at a preparatory school. Cousin Charles Carroll, known as Charles Carroll of Carrollton, Charles Carroll III, to distinguish him from his similarly named relatives, was a wealthy Maryland planter and an early advocate of independence from the Kingdom of Britain. Young Carroll was educated, like I said, at the Jesuit Preparatory School of Bohemia Manor in Cecil County on Maryland's eastern shore. So how can anybody deny Vatican involvement in the creation of this country? But no one knows about it because you never hear it. They keep it out of the history books. At the age of 11, he was sent to France, where he continued in Jesuit school, first at the College of Saint-Omer, and later another place in Paris, graduating in 1755. He served as a delegate to the Continental Congress and Confederation Congress, and later as first United States Senator to Maryland. He was the only Catholic and the longest-lived and last surviving signatory of the Declaration of Independence, dying 56 years after the document was first signed. Brother John Carroll, born January 8, 1735, died December 3, 1850, was a prelate of the Roman Catholic Church who served as the first bishop and archbishop in the United States. He served as the ordinary of the Archdiocese of Baltimore, Maryland. John Carroll joined the Society of Jesus as a postulate at the age of 18 in 1753. John Carroll was educated at Jesuit College Saint-Omer in French Flanders. In 1755, he began his studies of philosophy and theology at Liège. After 14 years, he was ordained to and later the priesthood in 1769. He was the richest man in America in the late 1700s. John Carroll became the first Catholic bishop in America, presiding over the See of Baltimore, which included Washington, D.C. Carroll is also known as the founder of Georgetown University, still sitting next to the White House, the oldest Catholic university in the United States, which to this day is used to train the minds of people to carry out the Jesuit agenda. Jesuits worked to change the laws of America to allow Catholics to take control. The Jesuits covertly had the First Amendment created not to establish religious freedom for Christians as they had already had it. They did it to create religious freedom for Catholics and to pave the way for them to take the country over, to control the country, which they're doing in a fine manner today. The Establishment Clause of the Religion Clause is the first of several pronouncements in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, saying, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The Establishment Clause is a limitation placed upon the United States Congress, preventing it from passing legislation respecting an establishment of religion. The second half of the Establishment Clause inherently prohibits the government from preferring any one religion over the other. However, is that the case in Rome? No. They get far much better treatment here than you really understand, folks. Christians today believe that it was declared to ensure their religious freedom, but it really was designed to allow Catholics to practice their faith and set up churches so they can one day take over. And that's the hierarchy of the church, understanding that. Now, here's a quote from the book 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles P. Chiniquy. We've talked about him many times, a good friend of Abraham Lincoln, remember? Which summarizes their strategy. We are determined, like you, to take possession of the United States and rule them, but we cannot do that without acting secretly and with the utmost wisdom. If our plans are known, they will surely be defeated. Silently and patiently, we must mass our Roman Catholics in the greatest cities of the United States. Let us then multiply our votes. Let us call our poor but faithful from every corner of the world. How sad will their awakening be when without our outnumbering votes we will rule the United States and lay them at the feet of the vicar, that he may put an end to their impious laws of liberty. Folks, the Jesuits caused many Irish and other European Catholics to immigrate to America, increasing their power. They designed the layout of Washington, D.C. to invoke satanic energy. Yeah, people don't get it, do they? You ought to look at this. The bottom point of the satanic upside-down pentagram is on the White House, which attracts satanic energy onto those who are in the area. A Masonic compass is clearly seen if you really start drawing a line in Washington, D.C. The layout of the U.S. Capitol clearly has a Masonic owl, which may point to the false god Moloch. And you can see that here. The Capitol Dome and the Washington Monument obelisk mirror the Vatican. And if you could put half the building side by side, they'd fit together nicely. They both have an obelisk placed in front of them, which designates them as a temple of sun worship. That's what your Freedom Monument is all about, folks. When you go there saying, oh, this stands for the freedom of the United States. You know what it stands for, folks? Sun worship. The goddess on top of the U.S. Capitol Dome is the goddess of war. Isn't that amazing? The American form of Esra is known as Columbia, so naming it the District of Columbia is saying that it's her district, her territory, where she rules. At the top of the U.S. Capitol is the Statue of Freedom, also known as Armed Freedom, which faces east towards the sunrise, towards Rome. She sits on a circular shape, representing the earth, and has a pluribus unum inscribed around its base, which means out of many one. This points to the Jesuits' mission for the United States of America, to use it to push the world into their one world government. She has many faces, symbols under her feet, which represent that the capital is under Roman authority. The fasci are a bundle of rods and single axe, which were carried as a symbol of magisterial and priestly authority in ancient Rome. That is fitting, as the city-state corporation of the District of Columbia is used by the Jesuits to control the world's intelligence agencies and military powers, to carry out war against the leaders of countries who have not bowed down to their authority. You see, when you go into that U.S. House of Representatives, these fasci symbols are right there on each side of the podium. Right. Why is that there? But it's there because it represents Rome's authority in that building. Jesuit Pope Francis knows what these fascist symbols mean. How come 300 million Americans don't? These fascist symbols show that they have authority over our court system. Yes, they do. Incredible. George Washington, folks, let's go back a little bit now. Let's go back a little bit ways here. Okay, we got about 10 minutes. So let's go back to George. Good old George. He was a full Masonic, he was a Freemason. Freemasonry is controlled by the Jesuits, folks. George Washington was in full Masonic attire when they laid the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol in 1793. The Great Seal on the United States of America, the $1 bill, how many times do I got to say this? Proclaims the Jesuit missions for their District of Columbia. The Great Seal was first used publicly in 1782. The Latin words point to one place, Rome. Annuit acceptus, meaning he favors our undertaking, that he is the Jesuit general and or Satan. How about Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages? The Jesuits helped found the country to use it to push the world into their one world government. On the right side of that dollar bill is the satanic hexagram above the head of the eagle, the phoenix, which has 32 feathers on one side and 33 on the other, pointing to the levels of Freemasonry. 13 stripes on the shield, 13 leaves, 13 arrows, 13 tail feathers, and the motto, E pluribus unum, which is Latin for out of many one, pointing to the formation of their upcoming New World Order government. The capital letters of the United States, in caps, point to their D.C. corporation, not the U.S. of A. The pyramid with the all-seeing eye on the left side of the dollar bill point to their D.C. corporation, or point now representing his watchful eye. The capstone is not yet down, right? In God we trust is not pointing to the Elohim in scriptures, but rather to the God that is represented on the dollar bill with the all-seeing eye, Satan. George Bush Jr. made a speech which pointed out that our founders created America to fulfill the goal of the Babylonian system. Good old Georgie boy. A new world order where Satan reigns supreme over mankind. Here's what he said. When our founders declared a new order of the ages, they were acting on an ancient hope that is meant to be fulfilled. Pretty clear, folks, but if you don't know what that is, it goes right over your head, right? Now, the Jesuit oath. Here's some of the text of the Jesuit extreme oath. I always like to bring this up every now and then. As recorded in the journals of the 62nd Congress, 3rd Session of the United States Congressional Record, House Calendar number 397, Report 1523, 15 February 1913, page 3215, 3216. Guess it was right there. But they'll tell you, oh, this is just made up. And the oath in part says, I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make the wage relentless war, secretly or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do, to extirpate and exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants, heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their race. Then when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poison cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poignard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor, rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do so by any agent of the Pope or Superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus. Now here's how the oath of these Jesuits has been carried out through American history. Just a little bit tidbit here. Okay, just a little bit for you, as there's so much. And like I said, you got to do your own homework on this. Now, let's see how much time we got left so we don't run over. I got about 5 minutes. So let's go. John Adams wrote to Jefferson about the rebirth of the Jesuits in 1814 and the danger they were to America. And he said, I do not like the resurrection of the Jesuits. They have a general now in Russia, in correspondence with the Jesuits in the United States, who are more numerous than anybody knows. Shall we not have swarms of them here, in as many disguises as only a king of gypsies can assume? If ever any congregation of men could merit eternal perdition on earth and in hell, it is the company of Loyola. Source? There are many, many sources for that. P.D. Stewart mentioned it in his book, Code Word Babylon. What did Jefferson say? Like you, I disapprove of the restoration of the Jesuits, for it means a step backward from light into darkness. At the Congress of Vienna in 1814, which was led by the Jesuits, the leaders of Europe formed a plan to destroy the American government, folks, which is still in existence today. Because if they didn't, the concepts of a republic that is for the people would spread to destroy them. At the Treaty of Vienna, in 1814, which was led by the Jesuits, the leaders of Europe formed a plan to destroy the American government. Okay? At the Treaty of Verona in 1822, the leaders of Europe and the Pope, Jesuits, gathered to discuss the ways to destroy the United States. Their main strategy, which still is in existence, was to send as many Catholic immigrants to the American shores as they could, in order to take over and destroy the government. Between 1820 and 1860, the Irish, most of which were Catholic, were never less than a third of all immigrants. Today, they are doing the same thing by allowing illegal immigration from Mexico, which is 95% Catholic. This gives them more people to support their agenda, pure and simple. Jefferson told President Monroe that we need to do everything in our power to stop this holy alliance from the Pope to destroy America. America's response to the two European Congresses was the Monroe Doctrine, which said, you stay over there and we'll stay over here. If you ever colonize in all of the Western Hemisphere, we consider it an act of war. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, who both opposed the Holy Alliance of the Papal Church, at least on paper, both died on the same day, July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. What are the odds? And no autopsies were performed that may have proved that they were poisoned. We never talk about that. That's why when we talk about the presidents that were killed, some of the influential people, we don't ever mention these two. But it's interesting, they both died on the same day, and it was the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Did they openly, did the Jesuits behind the scenes know that they could not count on these two men? It's a good question for history. For fanatics who want to go at it and learn about it. It'd be interesting what we could find out. Okay, we got about a minute and a half. Now, President Monroe died on July 4th, 1831, 5 years later on the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Again, what are the odds? He supposedly died from tuberculosis, but the symptoms are basically the same as arsenic poisoning. We can go on. We'll talk about William Henry Harrison. He was elected March 4th, 1841, and served for only 35 days. He got sick and died. He had defied the Jesuits in his inauguration speech, as he had defied their kings and said that no man should have the power. He also opposed the annexation of Texas, which the Jesuits needed to push the slavery issue. Okay, so that's just the beginning of some of the presidents they had to kill by the poison cup, or by the bullet, or by the sword, however you want to mention it. So when you say the Jesuit order, you can also say they're assassins. And they have people today doing the same thing for them. A lot of these mysterious deaths of doctors who are trying to find a natural cure for cancer could be some of their victims. So, as we go, we'll see you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.